that I'm a futurist, that I write books about the future and about marketing, and I'm a fellow of the Market Research Society here in the UK. Right? If you're a beginner with semiotics, this is where to begin. Right? Look at whatever it is, the brand, the store, its advertising, and ask yourself on behalf of the consumer, where have I seen this before? But Unilever has developed an app which, first of all, they found that when their brand managers and their people who liaise with retail use this app, sales of Unilever brands go up by about 5%. But that doubles when they factor in semiotics. As your consumer who's realised that their time is very precious and that somebody else is making money out of it, will no longer accept loyalty schemes where all they get is a measly few points for making a purchase. They're going to want compensation for every single thing. And in a sense, they should be compensated. Every time they open your app, every time they set foot in one of your stores, whether or not they make a purchase, every time they share something, every time they mention your brand to somebody else, they will increasingly expect all of that to be compensated. As a matter of fact, if you want to know something that people don't know about me, I absolutely love xylophones and marimbas and all those big percussive instruments. And so if I had more space and had more time and more years left ahead of me in my life, I might be a professional percussionist.
Hello, fellows. Welcome to the next episode of Jagged with Jasravee. Subscribe to my channel for conversations at the edge with thought leaders from marketing, branding, and the business world. Conversations that ignite new ideas with rough, sharp edges. Hi, Rachel. So nice to have you on my show.
Hey, thank you for inviting me on the show.
Rachel, if I requested you to tweet your profile, what would you say?
I would say that I'm a futurist, that I write books about the future and about marketing, and I'm a fellow of the Market Research Society here in the UK.
Very, very interesting. So futurology and semiotics is something we'll get into towards the end. And I think it's something that is not easily appreciated with semiotics also, understanding the future, predicting the future. Rachel, this is a fascinating field, semiotics, and most people don't quite get it. They might be awed when they look at the findings and they'd say, oh, this is so correct. But because they don't get a hang of the process, they're not able to use it as much as it should be used. And on the other hand, a little bit, everybody is a semiotician because it's human to, decode whatever is going on around us. If you'd like to take an example or illustrate use case scenarios for how semiotics can help in marketing.
All right, so I'll just quickly share a story that appears in one of the books I've just written, so there are two altogether. I had a telephone call from a client of mine, and they own a brand of jam, fruit preserve. Nice product, right? Really nice quality premium stuff, okay? And the brand was already out there. People loved the product. It had a nice, elegant brand story attached to it to do with, it was telling a story about 18th century Europe, and Marie Antoinette and big dresses and all that type of stuff, right? And so it had a nice brand story and there was great brand awareness. And so everything should have been fine, right? Everything should have been going well. But they'd rented a shop. You know how in every European city and indeed a lot of cities around the world, there's often a sort of historic quarter or an old quarter of the city where the tourists go to admire the scenery, right? So they'd rented a shop in exactly that spot, just the right place, I would argue, with their attempts to be, European elegance that they were doing. And this shop was not performing well at all. And they just didn't know why. And so they called me and said, can you go down there and take a look? So I went down there and took some photos on my camera, I generally speaking, I slightly prefer still photos over video, which is what ethnographers normally do. And so I got down there and I took a lot of photos of the interior and the exterior of the store. Right? So the exterior was this kind of curved bay window. It was kind of a weird setup because you couldn't see directly into the store. You were sort of looking at a wall, basically a wall with a nice velvet curtain hanging down the back of it. Right. So in the display area of this window, there was, I guess, a plinth or a column. And on top of this plinth is a jar of jam, right? And these jars are quite minimalist. They're a nice shape, quite heavy and squat. They're not heavily decorated, just very discreet label, you know. On the wall above the jar of jam is a sort of antique looking painting of somebody who might have founded the company. And then either side of that, you've got these heavy velvet curtains or drapes. Right? And this kind of theme was rather formal, if you like, was continued inside the store. And it was clear to me that somebody had tried to make it look classy, right? I'm using that word intentionally, right? It was very tasteful, right? So the retail staff were dressed up in these very sophisticated, quite plain, restrained black outfits. There are lovely stone tiles on the floor, vaulted ceilings, rows and rows of these quite minimalist jars on black shelving. You would think it would be okay, right? But honestly, there were red flags going up for me all over the place. And so I took loads of photos and then went back to my desk, where I asked myself a key question in semiotics, and a really easy one for people to get started with, which is where you ask yourself, where have I seen this before? Right? If you're a beginner with semiotics, this is where to begin, right? Look at whatever it is, the brand, the store, its advertising, and ask yourself on behalf of the consumer, where have I seen this before? And I had some hunches, which I was able to kind of verify on Google Images without too much difficulty, okay? And where I had seen this before was the funeral parlor and the crematorium and the columbarium. So a columbarium is a room where funerary urns full of ashes are stored. Right. So they'd even got so the building was like a church, you know. It was like a crypt, the underneath part of a church, you know. So there wasn't much natural daylight. You've got these stone floors, the medieval vaulted ceilings. The staff were dressed up like modern day funeral directors. Even the furniture in store, right? So where in my part of the world, when there's a funeral, the sort of coffin or the casket will be routinely made out of a light-coloured wood, often pine or something like that, right? With, again, minimal decoration on these wooden boxes and just a few sort of discreet brass fittings, you know. They'd had exactly that for their shop counter and all their cabinets. It was really crazy. It was... So I said, you know, look, this is why you're not selling any food. It's because you've accidentally created a really upmarket funeral parlor. So that's why people are losing their appetites. Exactly. So what we're talking about there is that there's all these things that I've mentioned, right? Like the shape of the jars, the outfits, the stone floor, the heavy velvet curtains, the portrait. This is exactly what people do in funeral homes in this country. They'll have like the deceased in an urn, you know, and a nice portrait over the top. All of this stuff, all of those things are semiotic signs, right? So in this store, there are not enough semiotic signs for delicious food. And there were too many semiotic signs that consumers have seen before in the context of funerals. Now, fortunately, semiotics will not only diagnose your problem for you, but also find solutions. So I said, look, it's not that hard, really. If what we want is to tell a story about 18th century Europe, it's not that difficult. There's plenty of visual resources available to us. You know, people were not dressing up in somber black outfits. People were wearing vibrant jewel colors, sugary pastels. Furniture just didn't look like coffins, right? Furniture at that time was covered in paintings. These people love to paint like bucolic scenes of shepherdesses and lambs and that type of thing on all their furniture, you know. And even food at the time was very architectural. So people used to make kind of sculptures out of pastry and that type of stuff, right? So in fact, there's a ton of semiotic signs that are really appetizing and fun and elegant and beautiful, which they just, for whatever reason, hadn't used. And so I delivered them a deck that was in 2 parts. So the first half was stop doing funerals. And the second half was, if you want to tell this brand story in a better way, here are a whole lot of semiotic signs that you can use with lots of visual demonstrations. And so they applied that in store, and then their sales finally went up.
Wow, how fascinating. The question that comes is that, okay, once one has understood how wrong one has gone, I mean, then, okay, one can, do a U-turn towards the direction that they want to go. But does it not make you surprised at how can a marketer go so wrong? And that was one thing. And the other thing, when you said that the hunch, that initial is the hunch that this is not right. It's not coming together. No, and there is a C part coming. The C part is, how does a marketer actually put in processes for semiotics in place? Because whenever it comes to an ethnography, I mean, it's almost always outsourced.
So many options, yeah.
But when it is semiotician, and it is like an orientation and a training, which typically is not part of any MBA school, not even market research specialization would have that, So yes, so there's an ABC. Yeah, over to you, Rachel.
Okay, all right then. So let me try to tackle that. So on the subject of kind of procedure and method. So this is why I wrote the first of these 2 books. So my first book came out in 2020, which is not that long ago. And I wrote it because, having been in this industry for 22 years now, I've seen semiotics grow immensely from a tiny little seed into something quite large now that's available in many countries around the world and is a flourishing area of marketing and market research. But as you rightly say, there's been very little instruction. And the thing is, semiotics is quite interdisciplinary. People come at it from different backgrounds. My background is in social science, so my PhD is in social psychology. And so I've got a strong feeling for method, and I like talking about validity and sampling and all that type of issues, right? And so I had things to say about how we can distill some kind of method or process out of semiotics that I knew was going to be useful, and that I'd been asked to deliver training and just to offer advice and help people out numerous times over a couple of decades. So I wrote this book as a self-contained course. So if you're an agency side marketer, if you're a self-employed marketer, a freelancer, or if you work for a market research agency, that book right there will provide you with a kind of comprehensive manual to help you get started and get up and running, right? But the other way that people manage to sort of distill method out of semiotics is seen in the way that some of my clients use it. So in my second book, which is on retail specifically, I enjoyed the sort of generous cooperation of Unilever, and they were surprisingly forthcoming about how they have built some of what they say is my best semiotic insights into an app that they've developed, which they call Shopper Eyes. And the app is there to be used by Unilever's own brand managers, and also by the people who liaise with retailers and the retailers themselves. That will basically offers a kind of tick box kind of app where you just check off how many items you can see at your fixture or in store. Right? And it just identifies quite a large number of items of best practice, right? Some of which have been distilled from semiotics. So what they found is quite an unusual thing. It's not something I would have done spontaneously. It would be to develop a semiotics app, because I kind of don't think we need one at this point. But Unilever has developed an app which, first of all, they found that when their brand managers and their people who liaise with retail use this app, sales, I think, sales of Unilever brands go up by about 5%. But that doubles when they factor in semiotics. So when they put semiotics insights into the app, and it's now a foundational part of the app, the results that it delivers in sales uplift approximately double. So that's how Unilever use it, which, as you can see, is completely different to the way that a self-employed researcher or marketer might use it. So,
absolutely. Rachel, semiotics in retail. You've written an entire book, how to leverage consumer insights to engage consumer and boost sales. And engagement has become such a big thing today, especially with all the content that is getting created. So if you had to talk about a few of the new ways that you've talked about in your book to engage shoppers in store and at fixture, merchandising, and about designing the retail stores, which insights would you like to share?
Okay, cool. All right, then. I'm just going to give you 3 of my favorite ones as opposed to the 3 most important ones, because people ask me this question a lot, right? So, in an attempt to be sort of interesting and refreshingly different, I'll just give you 3 of my favorite ones that I can think of right now.
Sure.
Adults everywhere love being made to feel that they've returned to childhood, right? So if you can usher an adult into a space where, like the chairs, that all the furniture is much too large, right? So if you sit in one of these chairs, which could be anywhere, it could be some sort of leisure resort, again, could be a hotel, could be in a department store, put some huge furniture in place. It makes for lovely Instagram photos where people can pull themselves up on these items of furniture and look like dolls, little dolls, you know, or give people the opportunity to do things which they haven't done since they were a child, right? Like a lot of adults you can even do it on a small scale. A lot of people really would go on bouncy castles if they had the opportunity. You know, there's inflatable castles that you have at children's parties. A lot of more adults would like to go on those things, and they will admit. And I tell you what else as well. You know, outside supermarkets, you sometimes see those. They're like rides for small children, like toddlers, and it'll be like an animal, like a horse or maybe a car, and it's on a spring. Right, it's mounted on a sort of pedestal wrapped in a spring. So when your 3-year-old sits on it, you know, they can kind of bounce up. And I've thought for ages that we should do those for adults, you know. And adults like to collect stickers and badges, and all of that stuff is still appealing when you're a grown-up. It's just that people stop giving them to you. Right? So that's my first favourite tip right now, is give adults things that make them feel like they've happily returned to childhood, even just for a few moments. Right. Number 2, bring the outside into your store. And if you can't do that, take the inside out. So when I say bring the outside in, how about some nice trees, right? I made a point of researching different types of trees. There's so many different ways of getting trees into a store, right? You can have real trees, you can have inflatable trees, palm trees are always popular, sunny, semiotic sign for happiness, lovely beach holidays and that type of stuff, right? There are also companies out there that will take actual living trees and kind of encase them in plastic so that they basically look natural, but they last forever. So some of that, bring some of the outdoors in, helps people to feel like they're having a break, right? Shopping, especially for women, especially grocery shopping, can be a chore. It can be drudgery. You can make it a lot nicer for everybody if you put something in your store that helps them to realize, oh, wow, I'm actually not at work right now, or, you know, I'm not at home mopping the floor. This is me having a break, right? So anything like that. And then when I talk about taking the inside out, if you're pushed for space inside your store, you feel like you haven't got enough room to do creative marketing, then go outside. Go and get a nice branded van, park up somewhere where consumers are, and, you know, sell tacos or fresh sandwiches or juice or whatever it is out of the window of your van, you know. When sometimes we need to go and meet people where they are. So there's a couple of things right there. Will that do, or do you want a third one?
A lot is centered around giving a different experience, both the insights and there's an element of surprise in both of these.
Yeah, you know, like definitely. Yeah.
Not expected, because I mean shopping can get mundane, and so is it about breaking that monotony, what you expect,
Yeah.
giving a little twist.
There's a lot of brands and businesses out there who are trying to make things more interesting by adding a bit of novelty, right? So let's imagine that you own a traditional store and you realise that people are a bit bored and depressed in your store. It's not a particularly fun environment, right? So what should we do? Well, let's put a pinball machine in the corner of the room, right? And we're going to hope that the fun experience of using the pinball machine is going to support and stimulate shopping, right? That's normally the order of the events, right? We'll gamify it, we'll add a bit of novelty, and we'll bolt on of something or other, and we'll hope that people will shop more, right? I kind of came to the view that this is the wrong way around, and that instead of creating an experience like installing a pinball machine that hopefully improves shopping, we instead should be allowing the shopping to support the experience. So just to give you a quick example of what I mean, not that long ago, in fact, while I was writing this book, I went to the Natural History Museum in London, which is a great place for a day out. Right? And so I went all around the Natural History Museum. I looked at all the exhibits and marveled at the whales and all that stuff, right? And then I did the whole thing. I went to the restaurant and ate dinosaur-shaped burger. I went to the gift shop, which was excellent, and I bought myself a large, fluffy velociraptor, which now lives at my house. So I in no way needed a velociraptor. Okay, no one needs a velociraptor. And if I really wanted one that badly, I could have just ordered one off Amazon, couldn't I? So clearly the velociraptor was not answering a need as such, but what it was doing was just like the dinosaur-shaped burgers in the restaurant, the gift shop with its wide array of fluffy dinosaurs was supporting and enhancing the experience that I'd gone there to have, which was to see novel things and learn something and feel like I was having a break from my normal routine. You see what I mean? So here we've got an institution that has tons of customer experience. It's a thoroughly entertaining place to be, where I happily spent money in both the restaurant and the gift shop that was served no real functional need, but thoroughly enhanced my enjoyment of the day out. So if we could have a bit more of that, I think that might be what it's going to take for traditional retail to survive in the digital age.
These learnings, Rachel, are very relevant for a mall as well, isn't it? Because
I really think I would love to see malls making a comeback. They used to be
because mall had become a weekend getaway in urban towns. Especially like a city in Mumbai, there are not many museums. Also, there's not much nature. I mean, everything is a little farther off. So in the weekend, you just go either a movie or, some just window shopping, perhaps. I mean, there is a bit of an exposure and there's a bit of learning that's happening just by you stepping out of your own boundaries.
That's right,
and limited this thing. And if consciously malls have avenues for learning, new experiences, like new cuisines anyways, they keep introducing new kinds of dresses or clothes.
There's been a lot of discussion about what's going to be the future of malls now that, digital culture is here and, Amazon and Alibaba take over the world. And so some people think that shopping malls will eventually reinvent themselves as self-improvement centres. What I want to say then is that the consumer in 2022, who has any degree of disposable income, is encouraged to work on themselves all the time as a project, right? You're supposed to be constantly improving yourself, whether it's physically or upskilling so that you can enhance your career, or working on some other aspects of personal development or whatever it is, right? So there's enormous pressure for people to do all of this stuff. And a corollary of that is that tech companies like Apple are great at providing the tools and the technology for people to do all this work, right? And so some people think that what we might see in the future are malls which are a bit like a combination of an Apple store and a gym, where you can go to, I guess, exercise. They can be places of learning. Of course, you can shop. You can use technology, enjoy virtual reality, get your devices repaired. You see what I mean? So some people think that that's what malls would be like in the future.
There are two types of semiotic processes that you've talked about: bottom up and top down. And so if you had to take examples and explain the relevance of both the processes.
So we've actually spoken about bottom-up semiotics in some depth already. So bottom-up semiotics, which is what I like to think of as one half of the game, is where we start with individual semiotic signs and symbols. And I've mentioned lots of them. So we've talked about wooden shelving, jars that are shaped a bit like funeral urns, stone tiles, outfits that might be either black or green. All of these things are individual semiotic signs, and all of them are capable of conveying some sort of meaning to the consumer, right? Bottom-up semiotics is where a process where you go and visit your store or whatever it is, collect some data, take some photos, take all your data home and compile a list of semiotic signs. And then in each case, you're going to ask yourself, where have I seen this before? Okay. And that's going to help you to decode this brand or product or whatever it is, right? And that can be really helpful for solving big problems like a shop that's failing, but also very commonly used by clients of mine in much more ordinary everyday situations. So let's say they're doing a packaging refresh. They might have, let's say, 4 different design routes that their packaging designer has supplied to them as options, and they want to know which is the best one to pick, right? So semiotics, bottom-up semiotics will answer those kinds of questions in a very straightforward way. And then the top-down stuff, we've touched on that a little bit, where just now, when I was talking about how individualism places a lot of demands and responsibilities on the individual consumer. Right? So we've got this imperative now to be constantly working on ourselves and improving ourselves. Right? So this is where we're into top-down semiotics at this point, because rather than observing small physical details of things like that outfit is black, those floor tiles are made out of stone, we're instead observing large-scale social phenomena. We're not merely observing that things are happening, but we observe that a thing happens, and then we ask some very semiotic questions about it, which I've detailed in both the books that I wrote. I've included a lot of examples of top-down questions. When we look at this situation, whatever it is, this brand or whatever it is, this unusual form of behavior, who seems to have the power? And we might also ask ourselves, what version of reality seems to be in play here? Now, I know those are seemingly abstract questions, but they have real consequences, right? Because once you've started treating reality as just being a version, a bit like an operating system, right? Some people have got Windows installed. Some people have got Apple operating system installed in their heads. They might as well be on different planets, right? So if we make a point of using semiotics to kind of interrogate different versions of reality, which we then treat as fragile and replaceable, we can then ask ourselves, like, what other versions of reality are we capable of imagining? Now, I know this might all sound a bit abstract and theoretical, so I'll just return to the example that you mentioned. So one of the sort of projects that I talked about in my first book, where I give people semiotic sort of exercises and things to do along with me as they're reading, is to say, why don't we start to design a campaign for a brand which in some way claims to improve women's mental health. Right? And so it was actually based on a real brief that I received, actually, and it specifically concerned mature women, right? So what do we know about mature women? Well, let's just keep this short, right? Amongst other things, they endure the menopause, don't they? And so right now, because there's certainly in Western consumer culture, there's this drive towards kind of being inclusive, right? So menopause is getting attention now in a way that it hasn't had for years, right? And there's a lot of quite confessional rhetoric around it, which says like, it's okay to be awkward, and you can come to work and tell everybody about your menopause, and let's get it all out in the open, and so on and so on. It's a very liberal kind of confessional approach to things, right? It all sounds very nice, but it's very much continuing to treat women's reproductive health as a problem, right? And so we can simply observe that that's a version of reality as opposed to simply reality, right? We can observe that there's a trend, if you want to call it that, or an emerging culture in which women of a certain age are encouraged to speak openly about this kind of a problem, and maybe that's a good thing. Right. But we're also capable then of asking what other versions of reality exist. Well, another version of reality that I can immediately envisage is that there's a version where menopause isn't a problem in the slightest, where it's like the best thing that's ever happened, And in fact, you don't have to, once you've developed that as a hypothesis, we don't have to look very far to find examples of women saying that menopause and their period of their lives post-menopause was the time when they felt the most energized, the most creative, the most healthy. They suddenly got loads of extra testosterone, so they're feeling physically strong. Their sex drive came back in a way that it hadn't done for a long time because they'd been raising children. You see what I mean? So what we're doing here is we're observing that nothing is very fixed. And we're observing that with any kind of trend or consumer need, there's going to be a dominant story, a culturally specific story, which might vary in different parts of the world, which is a version of reality. And if you can see it, then you're in a good position to imagine and envisage something else. And considering that brands are constantly trying to differentiate themselves and separate themselves from their immediate competitors, this kind of thinking where we're constantly looking for the flip side, what's on the other side of the coin, can be a very liberating process. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah. The dominant paradigm, the emergent paradigm, or the dominant codes, emergent codes, is in that context where there is a reality being painted, but you're saying, okay, well, this has been the dominant accepted reality, and these are the emerging codes. Now, do they have relevance and appeal with your consumer? Figure out, and what are the right signs to communicate it so that there is less resistance. And in that sense, the depth of understanding, like you're saying, would be so much that if you're communicating something very new as well, you've picked up the right signs to allow acceptance with your consumer. So while you were talking, I felt for innovation, communication for innovation or design, just what you described would be so relevant, because perhaps it's a new subcategory, so you have to pick up codes of the larger category because you want to be a subcategory, and yet you want to be distinct and have your own identity so that the entry barriers are not too low for competition. So in all that, this can be so useful. So Rachel, future of semiotics, if you had to pick up, two trends or two aspects. So in terms of where it's getting applied, so typically it's considered, like, it can get considered time taking, just like an ethno is. It can get considered, too abstract. And, there's agile marketing. I have to take decisions today. There's e-commerce, and social media. I have to take decisions every day. So if we had to look at application of semiotics in the changing marketing world. Could you talk about one or two areas of application of semiotics that are not widely known?
So, you know, the attention economy, right? Where you've got, every time you look at your handheld device or whatever it was, you've got, you know, kind of Alibaba and Big Basket and Amazon and all these companies kind of competing, right? And everybody wants your eyeballs on the screen, right? And there are a lot of consumers who really are doing their best in the sense that they could not spend any more hours of the day looking at the screen if they tried. They're really giving it everything they've got, you know. So now when that has been achieved, then you've kind of got this intense competition between different brands and different retail platforms trying to get people to put their eyeballs on their brand and not somebody else's brand, right? And that is the attention economy. And consumers, until quite recently, were unaware of it and were probably happier for that. But now they are aware of it. Now, one consequence of that is that people have realized that their attention is precious, that it's valuable. They have realized that it's worth money to these organizations. And so the consequence of that is that people are increasingly going to expect to be compensated for their time and attention. So if you think about, for example, a store that has a loyalty scheme where you can collect points every time you make a purchase, we're going to see new and improved versions of that in the future, probably with some help from semiotics, okay? Because your consumer has realized that their time is very precious and that somebody else is making money out of it, will no longer accept loyalty schemes where all they get is a measly few points for making a purchase. They're going to want compensation for every single thing. And in a sense, they should be compensated. Every time they open your app, every time they set foot in one of your stores, whether or not they make a purchase, every time they share something, every time they mention your brand to somebody else, they will increasingly expect all of that to be compensated. And so that's an event which marketers of the future are going to have to find ways of dealing with, and which semiotics has a lot to say about how, for example, we can do things like customer loyalty programs more imaginatively, and more effectively and in a way that gets people more excited, because who's really excited about their loyalty points right now? Not many people, right? So I guess that's one thing. And I suppose the other thing I would say is that people are, it's kind of a cliche already, but people are really looking for opportunities to be the star of the show, you know? If you think back to the days when TV first became a widespread consumer item, people were really happy to sit back and be entertained. That was the whole point of the TV, wasn't it? That was the whole point of it, was that you could just sit back and allow some entertainment to wash over you, you know? And that included ads, which were like little mini films. And I'm smiling as I say this because I was a child in the 1970s when TV was still relatively new. And advertising at that time was really quite a lot of effort went into creating an interesting story and all of that stuff. So ads were quite elaborate and finely crafted compared to the way they are now. Times have moved on and people are no longer happy to sit there and consume advertising. In fact, it's annoying for them. But what they are interested in seeing is they like so-called reality TV because they want to see real people who they can relate to and whose lives are similar to their own. And even better than that, they want to be the star of the show, and they want to be the poster girl for New Year or whatever it is, you know. And so one of the things that semiotics will be able to help marketers with in the future is this growing need for people who want the cameras pointing at them and not be the person sitting in the audience. So I think there are two big ways in which the future is going to be different. People are going to expect compensation for every little thing, and they would much rather look at themselves than look at your spokesmodel.
Yes, very interesting. So now that we're already talking future, Rachel, tell me about the post-COVID. Okay. If you have to say, there are emerging codes, you know, 4 or 5 emerging codes. What is that?
What shall I say? All right, here's 5 things that we can expect more of, right? Thing number 1, we can expect relationships to become even more digitally mediated. Why? Because on the one hand, people crave human contact and emotional connection, but they are increasingly afraid of each other and interested in keeping other people, especially strangers, at a distance, right? And there will soon come a time, maybe next week, where digitally mediated relationships like the one that you and I are having right now become the default, the norm, and the desirable state of affairs for most people most of the time. That's thing number 1. Thing number 2, I guess I've already talked a little bit about creator economies, where people want to be the star of the show. I think that we should look for interesting trends in education, because I notice that a lot of people now are calling themselves educators. It's quite common now for people to sort of, their bio will say things like, I'm a model and I'm also an educator. And I'm like, well, okay, what are you educating people about? Was it how to be a model? But no, it's never that. Is it? They're actually educating on some really big topics like how to think, So I think we're going to see some more of that. And we might see I don't know what's going on with the idea of education. It seems like it's becoming a bit crumbly over time. So we need to watch that situation. Thirdly, I think everybody around the world is waiting for virtual reality to get better the way it should be, and when that happens, finally happens, so that VR needs to be faster, it needs to have better graphics, but it needs a bit of technological advancement. It needs to deliver better sensory feedback. It needs to have better hardware, so we're not wearing suitcases on our heads, But we're not very far away from virtual reality being able to improve on all of those things simultaneously. And when we are there, when we've achieved it, large numbers of people will migrate more or less full time to living in a virtual space. And I don't blame them. And I might join them. Number 4, I think that Western individualism will continue to heat up. I mean, you think I'm constantly thinking, oh, surely this is boiling point now. But no, it can always achieve a few more degrees of heat. So I talked earlier about the pressure of individuals taking responsibility for things that previously, for example, a doctor would have taken care of, So we're going to see this kind of increasing, what I want to say, crystallization of the individual, where you're, on the one hand, your freedoms seem to increase over time, but also your responsibilities and the amount of work that you're expected to invest in being an individual is going to increase as well. And finally, I want to say something about brands, which is that brands are going to be are already seriously challenged by things like replenishment shopping on Amazon, for instance, right? Where you just say, well, I want this brand of tea delivered to my house every 4 weeks forever. And then the chances of you ever switching to another brand of tea are minuscule, right? That type of thing causes a problem for brands. And so the way that some brands will survive that situation is by just having a lot of heart and soul. So I was at the Retail Week Live trade show last week, and I met a couple of business owners, where the brand or the retail outfit exists to not just to make money, because anybody can do that. It exists to serve the interests of specific groups. So one was a shopping platform that was entirely about supporting and promoting businesses which are owned by British people of Afro-Caribbean origin. So essentially Black British businesses, right? Which is great, right? So now, like, your customer is not there. Yes, they might be there to buy shampoo, but more importantly, they're buying a better world. So I think that it's digital culture is a challenge for brands, a big challenge, but it's actually a great time to be a startup business with a big heart.
So beautiful. Brands with a lot of heart and soul, they have a great opportunity. Rachel, for a marketer, which is suppose they have they have an in-house research department. They're doing all kinds of research, consumer primary research, secondary research. In the primary, there's qualitative, there's quantitative. They're using ethno also. So if one had to make a case that make sure you're doing semiotics also, what is the extra layer of understanding that they will get? B,
so much.
Within the marketing process, are there any specific interventions, points of intervention where semiotics can especially help more than any other exercise of consumer understanding?
I spoke earlier about the difference between bottom-up and top-down semiotics. And so I want to say, here's my message for agency and client-side marketers who might be thinking about doubling in semiotics. Do some bottom-up stuff first. It's by far the easier part of it. Just make life easy for yourself, okay? Doesn't matter what you're researching. Maybe you want some new packaging for breakfast cereal, or maybe you're going to design a new concept store for sports equipment. It doesn't matter. Start with the bottom-up semiotics because it's easy to get going with it. You'll see immediate results and benefits. The concepts aren't too technical or difficult, right? So if you're selling sports equipment, then oh God, I would encourage you to look at, for example, some sports are very celebratory. The semiotics around the sport is very celebratory. So basketball, right? Incredibly celebratory. It's all about leaping into the air, cheering, all that type of stuff, right? In contrast, something like, let's take sailing, right? On the ocean. The semiotics around that stuff is much more serious. It's a bit more similar to mountaineering, right? So you're going to have people in heavy waterproof gear, mostly men. Those men have most probably got beards because the beards are protecting their faces from the harsh weather conditions. There's going to be loads of photography where there was clearly strong wind, and the models or actors in your photos are doing a display of, look how rugged I am, and look how able I can handle anything, whatever life can throw at me, we can do it. And it's all about how tough you are, whereas basketball completely different. It's like relatively more like a party or something, So if you've got a sports brand, I would encourage you to ask those kind of questions. If on the other hand you're selling sweets to children, then you're going to have a different bunch of semiotic signs, right? There's going to be questions about whether you do want to use animal mascots on your packaging and that type of stuff, right? So whatever it is, start with some bottom-up semiotics because it's much the easier way to begin. What you will find as you develop your skills, if you're practicing semiotic yourself, or if you're hiring other people to do some semiotics for you, you will find that over time you become a much more experienced buyer. You will be a much more experienced client. And I've seen this happen with my own clients where they will initially, when I'm first getting to know them, it's the bottom-up stuff because that's what they've heard about and they know how to ask for it. When I'm debriefing them back and talking about the state of the world, then they're able to see like, oh, this is about more than which is the best packaging design option, you see. And then they will start to come back to me with briefs which are more about the top-down stuff, about social trends and emerging consumer needs and all that type of stuff.
From our side.
What have you got? Oh gosh. Okay, that's the first time anyone's pulled a gun on me in one of those interviews.
Okay. Mother's best advice.
She told me to save plastic bags.
Okay. Alternate profession could have been?
Probably photojournalist visiting war zones.
Okay. What would you do on Mars for fun?
I play video games just like I do here on Earth.
Okay. As per your best friend, your most often used phrase.
100%. Usually while giving 2 thumbs up.
Okay. Okay. One thing no one knows about you.
I think everybody knows everything about me.
Okay.
I love to smoke, and I probably won't quit. There you go.
Okay. How liberating. A book you'd like to gift to all your friends.
Oh gosh, that's a really great question. I'm going to nominate Freud, Civilization and Its Discontents, in which he talks about atheism and religion.
Okay. Okay. What would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Don't smoke, because you'll never be able to quit.
Your favorite childhood memory?
Probably being in a school play aged about 7, where I played the Wicked Queen in Snow White.
Okay. If you had to devote the rest of your life to philanthropy, what cause would you choose?
I'm really very passionate about homelessness. The sight of homelessness drives me absolutely crazy, and so I will regularly take food to homeless people and stop and talk to them in the street and that type of stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Your greatest joy?
Who doesn't like sugar?
Yeah. How would you like strangers to remember you?
They thought that I was entertaining and that I made them think new thoughts.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. What's a lesson that took you a long time to learn?
Save for retirement.
What's one missed opportunity that you wish you could have a second chance at?
Like a lot of kids, I had a few lessons on various different musical instruments when I was a child, and then I didn't pursue it after I left school. So as a matter of fact, if you want to know something that people don't know about me, I absolutely love xylophones and marimbas and all those big percussive instruments. And so if I had more space and had more time and more years left ahead of me in my life, I might be a professional percussionist.
Oh, very interesting. Okay. What's next?
More books. Write more books. There's more. I've started talking. I'm unlikely to stop. Yeah. Okay. So there's more where that came from.
So Rachel, it's a wrap up now. I request you to share any online addresses, emails, books. We know they are available on Amazon. So all this will be available on show notes as well. But if you could quickly give us an idea. Yeah.
All right, then. Fantastic. Yeah. So as you know, there are 2 books. The first is Using Semiotics in Marketing 2020. The new one is Using Semiotics in Retail 2022. And you can buy them from Amazon, where it's available worldwide. They deliver worldwide. You can also buy from regular bookstores or from my publisher, koganpage.com. That's KOGAN page, PAGE.com. The reason I mention that is because if you buy from Kogan Page, you can use a discount code to get 20% off. Right? So the discount code is semiotics20. So that's SEM for mother, IOTICS 20. And if you use that code at koganpage.com, then you can get 20% off one or both books. That code is valid until the end of June.
Superb. That's very helpful. Any online addresses that people can reach out?
100%. Yeah, there you go. I said it, didn't I? 100% with both thumbs up. Right? So my name is Rachel Laws, LAWES. You can look at my website, Laws Consulting, or laws-consulting.co.uk, where you will find quite a few videos and downloadable resources. Also, it's a great idea to follow me on LinkedIn, where I make announcements almost every week about different events, conferences, training courses, things that people can get involved in, and all that type of stuff. And also, I'm quite chatty, so if you have a question about semiotics, that's a good place to find me.
Awesome. 100%.
100%. Right, kids? Everybody like and subscribe to this channel, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Superb. So it was wonderful having you, Rachel.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. You were great. You had very interesting questions. That was really quite fun and challenging. So thank you.